Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about software quality. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do I maintain high software quality during development? Well, you have a lot of experience in producing quality software, and that sounds really patronizing and sort of obvious, but let me explain this a little bit at the very least before you well, say things that are not left up. So yes, it is true that having experience matters, but it's not just about having experience. It is about having the right sort of experience, because the thing is, guys, when you use terms like senior and so forth, it is important for you to understand that means different things depending on who you're talking to. Most people just consider a senior to be anybody who's been doing work for a certain amount of years. And as I've said in other videos, that can mean basically anything, because there's no benchmark for how good you are at this thing. And so if you go to any company, doesn't matter which one you go to, and you ask them things such as, and this is one of my favorite, do you do unit testing? I don't think, well, on average, at the very least, based on all the times I've talked to software developers and so forth, most people will say yes, we do. Now, because they say that yes, they do, in some people's minds, that means that, yeah, they care about quality. For example, because unit testing would be an example of something that you do in order to raise quality. But then you might get into the company and you might realize that, yeah, but it's like 10% coverage, and most of those tests are absolutely some of them are like flaky, they're not so good, or they don't test anything relevant. There's all these nuances to the fact that you are doing something that you consider to be a qualitative practice, and unit testing is one of those things. Same thing if I say, do you do Scrum? Do you do like agile development? Do you work iteratively? Like all these things that are sort of indicative that you are following modern practices and you care about qualitative processes and efficient workflows and stuff like that. These things everybody can agree that yes, we are doing, but the actual execution is what dictates whether or not you can do anything with it. I'm pretty sure that if you ask every single, and I have that situation actually with a coworker, which was a year ago now. He said that he found it strange that according to the CEO at the company we were working at, they have something they call speak up culture. But whenever he speaks up, people ask him to shut up, and I go, yeah. Welcome to the beautiful part about language and what you mean and what I mean, because I'm pretty sure that if you went to every single dictator who's ever lived and asked them if they had a speak up culture, they would all say yes. And the only difference is really between your definition and their definition is that, well, yes, you are encouraged to speak up, but if you say something I don't like, then I shoot you. And maybe we think differently about what speak up culture means, but that is the essence of your problem. So how you maintain high quality during development is literally down to, do you actually know how to do that, and do you have the people around you that allows you to do that? Because it's circumstantial how much you can push this. Because trust me when I say this, guys, it is not fun to be part of a team of people who don't care about quality, or believe that they care about quality, just that you have a different definition of what that means. Because you might feel that, as I was saying, unit testing is a really important part of quality, and they might feel that, no, why would we do that? We have a bunch of QAs who sit and do everything manually. That's much better, of course. And this battle will be never ending. So I can only tell you what I use. The problem is, as I said, the way I do it, and the way that you might have to do it in like a given company or so forth. So this is a thing that is very much lost in translation when you listen to tech talks, for example, where people sort of preach about practices and stuff like that. And I always tell them the same thing. That is perhaps the ideal case, what they're preaching. and it may not be realistic for your situation, and that's why I try to teach people that the best thing for you is to figure out which qualitative process, what practices do you have that you can apply that will give you some benefit given the circumstances that you have. It's the same thing I preach when I talk about delivering software or how you build your system. It's contextual. If you don't have endless amounts of time, well then maybe not going for like a multi-cloud super infrastructure with like tons and tons and tons of overhead is the right way to go. Maybe a sleepy little monolith is the way to go. And if you're in a situation where you really have this gigantic super system that needs to do all the fancy things and so forth and so forth, then maybe you want to at least write one or two tests along the way, because it depends on like your investment. It's the same thing with quality and like all the things that I've always told you guys. It has to stand in proportion to the thing that you're doing. So the bare minimum that I do, if we're talking like I'm going to talk like layers here. First and foremost, the minimum thing I do, even if it's just an MVP project or anything like that, is make sure that you have a linter, and make sure if you're using a type system or something like that, you have some type of check that makes sure that your code compiles and that the linter is warning you for like common mistakes and issues like that, because there are actually some linters who do, like some linters are actually pretty good, so that they can warn you at least for like things that might become problematic for you. Those are the two bare minimum things that I always use, and that is enough for a personal little hobby project that I do on the side right now. Next layer, and this is, for those of you who know about it, this is basically what the testing pyramid is there to illustrate for you, to give you a visualization of how you scale up a testing process. Next thing is, alright, unit testing. Yes, unit testing is a way, and it's probably the most common way that people think about raising quality. The problem with it is that for most people it's a little bit like exercising and things like that, where not everybody feels like doing it, and the people who may or may not feel like sort of half-heartedly about it will do it sometimes and sometimes not and so forth. But it is the most important thing that you can do, together with the Boy Scouting and like all these smaller things. It's the most important thing, like hands down, for sure it is, in terms of like things that you can add on top of your process in order to increase quality. One thing that I found to be extra useful is, and this is also going to sound a little patronizing, learn how to write code that is testable. Learn how to structure your source code so that it is modular and easy to work with, so it's comprehensible. I had that problem yesterday. I have a team who reached out to me and wanted some feedback on how to raise, how to fix basically their entire system. They don't know how to do it. And the first thing I do when I get into it, and I see that, like I pull down the repo and I see that, like there's a million folders. There's not one source folder, not one single source folder. Like there's just code all over the place, and I kind of go, well, a first attempt at fixing this might be to, establish some basic structure in the repository so the files make sense to you, and that they're like sort of in folders that make sense, sort of like how you use a computer. Add a folder that is named something and add stuff that is adjacent to that into that folder. That's a good start. And then, as I said, then maybe after we've done that, maybe we can create a test folder and we can add on top of that. So again, it's contextual. But at the very least, these basics, they will always be the thing that will give you, I would say, 80% of the value. The remaining 20% will be extremely contextual, depending on like what type of system you're building. We can talk about integration tests, which is the next thing that you can add if you have external systems or databases or things like that you might want to connect to. If it's a front-end application, you might want to consider visual regression testing, things of that nature. If you have like a fairly sophisticated system, you might want to introduce end-to-end testing and so forth and so forth. And so there's like a million things that you can do in order to maintain high quality over time. But those basics I was talking about are among the most important things that you can do, and you should do that in every single project. And then you should ask yourself, like, take a look at the testing pyramid, for example, and try to learn what the mindset behind it. Not just there are unit tests, there are integration tests. Like, you don't just add stuff on. Try to think about the nature of the application that you are building, and the most important question is to always ask yourself, given this system that I have right now with all the different circumstances and so forth, what can I do to make sure that there are no mistakes or anything like that going on in the code, and that it will always work as I intend. And then add learn about the various ways that you can apply quality checks and so forth. Like, don't just listen to people. So as I was saying, like, don't just do unit testing because somebody told you to do unit testing. There are situations where unit tests are absolutely pointless, and that's why you have to learn how to make sure the code works. And that is pure experience, pure and simple experience, and it has nothing to do with seniority, if you ask me at the least. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way that you maintain high software quality during development is that you understand what usually happens when you make mistakes and why those mistakes are made. As I was saying, having a type system, that's a really way, like for everybody who's ever worked in PHP or say JavaScript or something like that, they will all tell you that a type system helps solve some bugs and some mistakes. Having a linter or something like make sure that you don't do dangerous stuff that might go bad for you can also at time solve something. Those two things are super cheap to add. Basically, like it's basically free security that some things will be sort of taken away from the range of things that you can fuck up in your system. And then, as I said, consider the system. If it's a lot of heavy logic and a lot of algorithmic types of things where you might do calculations and stuff like that, well, in unit tests, they are pretty good at that because they're really good at testing like pure logic. If you have a high integration system with a lot of external APIs and a lot of databases and stuff like that, then integration tests are a little bit more useful than pure unit tests because they're pretty good at different things. If you have a visual element to the whole thing with a lot of like UI components and stuff like that, well, then unit test isn't really going to help you, but visual regression testing might. And that's the thing that you should keep with you. You have to sort of understand the various ways that you test or add quality to a process of delivering software, and pick the things that make sense for that specific situation, because I promise you guys, you will speak with more software developers who just write tests because that's what everybody does, right? They have no idea why they're testing, or then it's pointless. You might as well just skip it, because if you don't even know how to use these tools in an effective way, then they lose more or less all of their value. And that is the trick to having like sustaining quality over time. You have to understand why you do the things you do and what benefits they give you, regardless of that is using microservices, a monolith, or using one tool versus another and so forth. Understand the benefits that you get, and then have an understanding of what you need in order to ship quality software. To me, the bare bone basics, as I said, make sure that the code is easy to understand, Boy Scout often, write, like add some like basic testing quality things on top, and then pick the testing strategy that will suit your specific system. Have a great day.